Happy Thursday, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day today. My name is Andrew Heischman. I'm the lead forecaster here in WW116. So in today's video, we'll be taking a look at the tropics. We actually have quite a bit to talk about today. We'll be taking a look at the tropics. We'll be taking a look at the ECENS ensembles, basically just, more model data in regards to the tropics. We'll be taking a look at the mesoscale analysis to currently get a look at the area of low pressure that is across the region in which we'll actually see this driving the severe weather for today. We'll be taking a look at the satellite view. We'll be moving on to the Storm Prediction Center to see if there's any threat for severe weather today, which there is. We'll be taking a look at the forecast models for today's severe weather. We'll be moving on to the forecast models for the significant cool down that we're kind of expecting across the country. And then we'll be taking a look at the National Weather Service hazards, so basically your warnings, watches, advisories, and so on. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get on into it as we do have quite a bit to cover today. So, we still have that area of low pressure here basically across the northeast. It's generally moving eastward. Overall formation of the system is kind of low. Overall formation through 5 days is a low 30% chance, pretty much a 70% chance of this thing not forming. I've only seen trends go down with this system because it was at a medium 50% overall formation. Now it's actually dropped to a low 30%. So I don't really expect much out of the system. I mean, even the system is kind of moving away from all areas of land, kind of shooting down now. Shooting more this way, mostly eastward before, but now it's actually getting a little bit more of a southern track apparently. But overall formation is relatively low. Formation through 48 hours, or basically 2 days, is also very low at a 10% chance. In terms of the Eastern Pacific, there's really nothing expected. Central Pacific, nothing really expected. So, let's go and take a look here at ECNS ensembles. We'll go and take basically a GIF here, and we'll see what we're kind of expecting now. There's kind of some interesting things and why I want to talk about this for today. There's really 3 areas we're kind of paying attention to in terms of the tropics. Of course, we do have already that disturbance here that the National Hurricane Center has put out. But we have been kind of seeing, a lot of activity here under basically the Caribbean. Southern Caribbean basically here just saying that, there could be some support for tropical cyclone activity. But I don't really expect too much out of this, but it's generally going to be moving westward. This has been the trend for the last few days. This thing's still supporting it. This thing's been supporting it for, quite a few days now. So this thing could potentially become a disturbance by the National Hurricane Center here soon. We also do have a new area we're kind of paying attention here to basically off the west coast of Africa, basically over the Cape Verde Island, basically south of it. But we're basically, we're kind of paying attention to this area too, as we're starting to see some growing support of ECNS ensembles. Kind of a lot of members here, kind of in a dense area, kind of showing that there could be the possibility for tropical cyclone formation. But generally this thing is going to be moving northwestward into the central Atlantic. And basically, I don't really expect any threat out of this at all. So that's what we're dealing with in terms of the tropics. Now let's go and take a look here at the mesoscale analysis. We'll actually go ahead and take a look here at the observations, actually the surface pressure here. We have a relatively strong area of low pressure here, basically under the Midwest, pretty much under southern Missouri into northern Arkansas, with a central low of 994 millibars. This has actually been the driver of the severe weather for the last 2 days. Basically formed over the eastern bits of Colorado and has tracked basically eastward. And this thing will continue to track eastward, bringing the severe threat along with it. In terms of instability for today, we actually do have some instability starting to build into the region of Florida, in which we'll actually change the sector right now so you guys can kind of see it. We're starting to build some instability here on the western parts of Florida. We're already talking around 1,200 joules per kilogram, which is plenty enough instability to cause some storms. We do have some storms going on here basically in the panhandle, the eastern panhandle, in which if we look at radar right now, we actually have a new tornado warning here in effect for this area. We do have a relatively large special marine warning in effect, basically just going over water spouts and wind gusts to nearly 50 knots. So kind of crazy in terms of that. Let's go ahead and take a look here at this tornado warning. I usually don't really do that in these videos, but since we already have one, why don't we go ahead and take a look and see what this is. So this is for basically Dixie and Cross City here. Okay, let's go take a look at velocity. Well, yeah, it looks like we do have a meso here, basically an area of rotation going on. This is a radar indicated threat, basically saying that basically the radar has indicated rotation. If this was confirmed, we would take a look at correlation coefficient, in which I think that's what they call side lobe contamination. But that's basically what we're dealing with in terms of that. So we do have a kind of a meso going on with that system. Anyways, kind of getting sidetracked here. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the satellite view. We do have relatively cloudy conditions across the southeast, with that system moving into Florida. These clouds do build up basically into the northern Great Plains, for areas such as, Minnesota, stretching all the way down to pretty much Arkansas. Anything in Texas, pretty much west, is relatively clear. Anything pretty much, like in North Dakota through basically, bits of western Oklahoma here. Around in this area, it's relatively clear. We move to the northwest, we start to have a little bit more cloud buildup, basically patchy clouds, maybe some sunshine patchy throughout the day throughout that region. In terms of the northeast, it looks like we do have some clouds basically over Maine and some of these northeastern states. In the mid-Atlantic, we're looking relatively sunny for today. And then basically the Ohio Valley, it looks like it's dealing with some clouds as well. So let's go and take a look here at the Storm Prediction Center. We do have the threat for severe weather today. We do have a slight risk in effect, basically severe threat level 2 out of 5. In terms of tornadoes, we do have a 5% chance, basically meaning that every single 25 miles, we have a 5% chance of seeing a tornado in this area, basically in this brown area stretching from the central bits of Florida, basically moving up into pretty much eastern North Carolina, and as far west as the central panhandle of Florida, in which we're already seeing those storms take off. So in terms of wind, we do have a 15% chance for wind damage today. Basically, some storms could get in excess of 60 miles per hour in terms of wind gusts. Every single 25 miles, you have a 15% chance of seeing, damaging winds associated with that. In terms of hail, we aren't really expecting anything hail related. So that's basically what we're dealing with. So in places like the Slight, and what we're dealing with for the Slight, this does include Jacksonville, Tampa, Petersburg, Orlando, and Tallahassee, Florida. Inside of the marginal, this does include, like Miami and basically areas like that, like Fort Lauderdale. But that's basically what we're dealing with in terms of that. We do have a TSTM risk, basically just generalized thunderstorms, basically across western Kentucky, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and basically southeastern Missouri. So, in terms of day 2, we do have a marginal risk, basically for bits of the mid-Atlantic, basically the southeastern Virginia. This does include Virginia Beach, and we also do have that marginal risk stretching into eastern North Carolina. In terms of tornadoes, we do have a 2% chance for tornadoes, basically meaning every single 25 miles, you have that 2% chance of seeing a tornado. In terms of wind, we do have a 5% chance for damaging winds, being 60 miles per hour or more. Then we move on to hail. Don't really expect anything for hail for this day either. Day 3, we do have a TSTM risk basically across the northeast, just generalized thunderstorms expected, nothing really under severe criteria. All right, so let's go and take a look here at the forecast models for today. So we did already see that we have, around 1,000 joules per kilogram, moving into basically, bits of western Florida here, including the Panhandle and just the western parts of the state. So we're already seeing that going, on at the moment. So let's go and take a look at the dew points. Now, dew points yesterday were expected to be in the 70s, in which that's still relatively supported. We're looking at dew points here in the, maybe mid to upper 70s in some areas, which is honestly, perfect in terms of storms. So in terms of that, we do have, those dew points, of the 70s moving into the panhandle of Florida here, and then basically, just moving eastward as the system does track along that way. So moisture is there. We do have that version of lift, which is the cold front that we have associated with this area of low pressure. So we have the lift, we have the moisture. Now let's go and take a look here at the instability, in which we're already seeing that, instability values, pushing into 1,000 here. So if we go ahead and take a look here, this is NamNest. Of course, this is one model. We'll actually take a look here at other models. These models are kind of supporting, up to 2,000 joules per kilogram of, basically instability, which that's plenty enough instability that you need for thunderstorms to fire off. So this will generally move into Florida for today, so a decent amount of instability expected, which can definitely support some severe weather for today. So we have our moisture, we have our instability, and we have our lift. So let's go and take a look here at a supercell composite. I like to use this because it's basically like a parameter that mixes, pretty much shear and, instability together. So let's go and take a sounding here. I'll actually go on NAM for supercell composite. We'll actually take a look at that. I'll go in a little bit. So we'll go and take one here basically for the central panhandle. This is for 15Z. We'll go ahead and take another one for basically, near like Orlando here. Take one there. And we'll take a cherry pick sounding basically here over northern Florida. So in terms of the panhandle, we do have a slight veering wind shear here, basically indicating that maybe a few tornadoes are possible. Dew's in the mid-70s, which is perfect, excellent conditions. Mixed layer Cape, is kind of around 800, which, honestly is not really the most instability, but I've seen tornadoes form out of this type of instability. D Cape around 404. Pretty much, nothing really, not really that high in terms of that. So basically, damaging winds could be marginalized, maybe just gusty winds with some of these storms. So in terms of that one near Orlando, we do have a slight veering wind shear pattern, maybe pretty much indicating that a weak tornado could be possible. However, we do have those mixed layer Cape under 500, so I don't really expect much out of that. Maybe a weak tornado or two possible, but honestly, I don't really expect it around this region. But we'll see, because we do have that Storm Prediction Center risk from the the Storm Prediction Center. So we do have we do kind of have a slight veering wind shear pattern. Instability is quite limited though. D Cape is also quite limited, so I really don't expect too much of that. But dews are looking nice in the 70s. In terms of that cherry pick sounding, we do have slight veering wind shear pattern here too, maybe a tornado or two possible. Relatively dry aloft here. Honestly, this might even support some small hailers. I don't know about severe hail, but this thing might support some small hail. In terms of, because this sounding is kind of showing that wet bulb zero temperature just around 700 millibars, which usually supports hail, and it's relatively dry aloft, which basically, around the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And on top of that, we do have some instability mixed in around this area. So this can definitely support some hail in this sounding alone. D Cape is over 1,200 joules per kilogram, which can actually support damaging winds, probably of maybe even 60 to 70 miles per hour. Maybe some instances of 80 miles per hour in the sounding, but this is one sounding, of course. You can't take that 100% seriously. In terms of mixed layer instability, we have over 1,200 joules per kilogram, which is honestly, that's enough to get the job done, for real. This is not really a bad sounding in terms of that. The shear's there, the moisture's there. We literally have the instability and everything like that. So in terms of that, that's actually not looking so bad. All right, so let's go and take a look here at basically the precipitation. We'll take a look at the simulated radar. All right, so we'll take a look here at simulated reflectivity here. So this thing is mostly, kind of in a line. This is basically that line of storms we're talking about moving along a cold front. This is kind of low resolution. So I guess we'll take a look here at NamNest for this. So yeah, we'll basically have what we call a QLCS, basically just a long line of storms, is expected to go throughout the region, basically throughout Florida today. With that severe weather. So that's basically what we're dealing with in terms of the severe weather for pretty much today. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the forecast models for the potential cold, the cold spell we're going to be dealing with here in the future. So we have this area of low pressure, in which we actually already saw here on the Mesoscale Analysis, in which we actually looked at basically here across the the Midwest here. We'll go and take a look at it again real quick. Just to kind of show you. Okay, I guess the Storm Prediction Center's Mesoscale Analysis is broken. But anyways, you guys kind of saw that in the beginning of the video. This is right here where that area of low pressure is. It's generally going to be moving to the eastward, as you can see, bringing that severe threat along with it. I will say this is actually going to bring some significant rain here, especially for the mid-Atlantic, which we'll actually look at here in a moment. There is flood watches in effect, throughout the mid-Atlantic, in which, this does actually include me. But there is some, flood watches in effect for basically the mid-Atlantic here, as this area of low pressure is expected to bring, a decent amount of rainfall, potentially over, maybe over 2 inches in some areas with locally higher amounts. So then we'll have this basically Arctic blast moving down through the, basically throughout the country, in which we can actually see GFS is still supporting those cold temperatures here, basically in northern Alabama, and pretty much, northern Mississippi as well. I mean, we're talking southern Florida getting as low as 45 degrees. This is at nighttime. This is obviously your coolest time. Across the mid-Atlantic, around freezing here. Northeast is well below freezing. We're talking, like Wisconsin. We're talking, well below freezing. We're talking the 19 and 20 degree range. This is a pretty significant Arctic blast. In terms of the southern Florida area, we're talking around, maybe low 70s, which that's kind of, average. But as we move into the northern parts of the states, we're getting in the 40s, especially across the panhandle here. So a relatively big cool down is expected for a lot of the country in terms of this. And honestly, this has kind of been supported for the last several models. So we'll just have to continue to monitor this over the next little bit. This is really showing that freezing line getting as low as basically, Carolinas, basically into northern Georgia here, and into the northern parts of South Carolina, and basically the majority here of North Carolina. So, honestly, kind of crazy. So, So let's go and take a look here at the National Weather Service hazards. We do have a red flag warning in effect for basically bits of the southeastern panhandle, stretching across basically the eastern panhandle here. We do have the western panhandle of Oklahoma included inside of this red flag warning. Basically just means that fire weather conditions are kind of expected. Basically this usually means that low relative humidity along with high winds definitely can, allow the support for some wildfires to occur. So just be on the lookout for that. We do have a dense fog advisory basically here for the northeastern bits of Minnesota. As we can see here, basically just dense fog means that, difficult travel can be expected. We do have high wind warnings in effect basically for this area here, basically across southwestern bits of Kansas. We do have one county here basically in southeastern Colorado. We do have bits of western Oklahoma inside of this, high wind warning. We do have one warning here of basically here in Wyoming, southeastern Wyoming with a high wind warning. And then we do have, a few counties up here and basically in northwestern Montana inside of this high wind warning as well. So we do have some high wind watches in effect as well. They don't really show here on the map. But we do have a relatively large area of, basically wind advisory stretching here from basically the Tennessee to, North Carolina border here. We do have some over northern Georgia. Basically the majority of Alabama here. We do have a few counties in southern Tennessee. Extreme western Florida has these. We move into basically coastal Mississippi. There is, those wind advisories in effect. Basically central and southern Louisiana, moving into the central eastern parts of Texas, and moving up into the northern state. Literally all of Oklahoma. We do have, basically southern and southeastern, basically Kansas here. Western Arkansas, and basically southwestern Missouri. We do have a small sliver here over southern California as well inside of this wind advisory. Basically just meaning that windy conditions are expected. The high wind warnings, that means that, basically high winds are imminent, likely being over 50 miles per hour or more. So let's go ahead and move on to the winter side of things. We do have a freeze warning in effect for basically western Texas, in which we did see yesterday. I'm not exactly sure if that's for tonight, or if it's for early this morning, because, probably this is around the coldest time of the day. I'm actually recording this at around 8 o'clock a.m., so this is, relatively around the coolest time of the day. That's what we're dealing with in terms of the winter side of things. Now let's go take a look at the flooding. We do have a flash flood warning in effect for the panhandle of Florida, basically meaning that, flooding is quickly, expected. Basically, quickly rising water is expected to occur. We do have a flood watch here. Basically, we actually have two areas of flood watches. Here for the Mid-Atlantic, like I was talking about, we have those. Basically, those flood watches, basically meaning that flooding conditions can be possible. We do have some flood watches basically here across the northwest. This does include the northern bits of Idaho, as well as basically northern Washington state inside of that flood watch. We do actually have coastal flood watches in effect for basically bits of, New Jersey moving into Delaware and Maryland here, basically across the tidal Potomac area with those coastal flood watches. There are some coastal flood warnings, I believe, here in effect basically here for the coast, basically meaning that coastal flooding is expected. So in terms of the flood warnings, we do have flood warnings in effect for Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, basically northwestern Ohio. We have northeastern Pennsylvania, bits of northern New Jersey, New York. Looks like we do have some basically here near coastal Mississippi and basically southern Louisiana. So that's basically what we're dealing with in terms of the flooding. So alright, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up for today's video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you leave a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel. If you guys have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, in which I will make sure to get to them. But anyways, guys, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like. It would be greatly appreciated. But anyways, guys, I hope everyone has a wonderful day today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.